So you want to become better at music production more quickly. Well, here's one of the things that you can do to do that. Today we're going to be taking a look at sessions, which are all of the projects that I tend to have that aren't actually music. What I mean by that is I have a lot of things that I try to do, that I try to experiment with, that I try to learn with, and really a production project isn't the right place to do that kind of thing. So just to give you a quick example, here we are in a newer session that I've started working on today. This is just a session with a simple kick and bass. And then I have a preset in here that sounds something like this. And this is the beginning of my experimentations for one of the preset packs that I have coming up. I'm actually working on Psychedelic Essentials Volume 4, and this is one of the presets that is going to be included in that. And the reason why I'm doing this inside of a session, inside of a project that isn't really a production, is because when you do this in a production, it just tends to get in the way of the actual music that you're trying to write. Like for example, right now, yes, we have a kick, we have a bass, we have some other thing inside of Vital that I needed for a little bit, and then we have this preset over here. So there's like 4 tracks over here. But if you want to do this for all of the presets that, for example, make up a pack or something like that, you're going to have 120 tracks or 130 tracks, something like that, because that is how many presets there are inside of a pack. So you can see that we have projects that aren't necessarily music. And this is really, really important for some people to understand, because most people don't actually tend to work that way. Most people tend to just open up their DAW and start doing stuff and see where they go from there. But personally, I really like to kind of split up my workflow into 2 ways, in the sense that one time I have the writing process, which is all of my productions. And then at other times I have the session process, which is where I learn things, where I experiment, where I obtain new information that I can then use inside of my productions. What that also means is that when it comes to the productions themselves, I'm not necessarily experimenting too much. I've actually talked about this concept on stream before, and I'm sure that this is going to be uploaded to Conversations with Projector as well, because this was a really interesting conversation. But when it comes to making music as a profession, you really cannot afford to waste any time, because of course all of your time is valuable. All of the time that you spend experimenting around and messing around is also time that you could have spent working on projects, working on videos, working on mixes for clients, whatever it is that you do. And so when it comes to the music, when I'm actually writing, I don't tend to look for happy accidents. I don't tend to experiment with different things. I don't tend to write in a way that, I don't really know what the outcome is going to be. I have a sound in my head, or I have a concept in my head, and I just execute that concept. And then I go to the next sound, and I go to the next sound. And these are all things that I already know. These are not things that I'm like unfamiliar with, how it's going to work, how it's going to sound. I just write the things that I know is going to work and that I know is going to make for some good music. And then when I tell myself like, oh, I need to experiment with something, or I need to learn something new, or I need to improve my sound design, anything like that, I'll actually do that in a separate session. Now, one of the biggest benefits of this is that you have a list of things that you can go back into and learn from again in the future. So for example, if I just hit Ctrl-O and I go to my sessions over here, you can see I have this massive list of projects over here that is just labeled nicely. It tells me the date in some cases. As you can see, I later started giving them dates. And you can see that for each of them, I've just given it a name and explaining exactly what I'm doing in here. So for example, in one of the last videos where I talked about a very specific bassline technique, this is the session in which I experimented for this particular technique. Here you can see some other things as well. You can see that I have some Vital presets that I was working on. This was for the last pack. We have different stuff for different students and whatnot. So overall, hopefully you can see that after a few years of doing this kind of thing, having separate sessions whenever I want to learn something, you can just see that I have this massive list of projects that just explain to me like, okay, this is going to be in the project. And if I ever need to go back into a project to look at something specific, I can easily find it. Imagine if you were doing this inside of your actual writing projects. When it comes to my writing project where I actually do some production stuff, you can see that this is far less organized. I tend to just give it a number as a name, and I just keep numbering up and up and up. But other people, they maybe mash keys or something like that, or they give it a random title. If you actually have to find something that you want to learn from, again, some synth that you made or some particular technique that you applied, then it becomes really hard to actually find that in this random list of productions, as opposed to a list of cleanly organized projects in which you explain exactly what is happening. So to recap, there's 2 benefits of doing this. 1, you have a difference between learning time and actually writing time. And 2, if you do ever need to go back into a specific idea that you want to look for, it is probably easier to actually find that idea within your sessions. Now, probably the last thing that I want to talk about is jam sessions. These are a separate type of sessions and I tend to store them in their own little folder. So here's just an example of a jam session. This is where I do a lot of experimentation when it comes to a specific type of sound design. In this particular case, I went for a very glitchy type of sound design. And the whole idea here is not just the learning part of the session, but also being able to extract sounds from this session. So in this particular case, as you can see, a lot of these sounds are actually rendered out in very long files, which I then just stored inside of a folder over here. And now whenever I want some of these sounds, I can actually take them just directly from the folder instead of having to open up the session. Now, I did a separate video on this kind of workflow, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. All I want to say here is that there's a little bit of difference there in that you're not just gaining the learning from it, but you're also gaining some other resources, which are the sounds. And really, I kind of found it hard to talk about exactly what I'm doing within sessions and how it actually works, because it is a very, very broad topic. There's a lot of different things that you could try to learn from. There's a lot of different approaches that you could try to have. I just really wanted to make this video to give those few people that don't really know about this difference between the actual learning segment and the writing segments, that you are supposed to, or at least in my opinion, supposed to split that up into two different projects, two different areas of work. I wanted to give those people just a quick heads up of that being a workflow improvement that you can make. I just wanted to explain within general terms the way that I like to work in that regard. So that's going to be everything for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed this one. Let me know if you did by leaving a like and make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Another way to support me is by checking out some more of my content, so there will be 2 videos up on the screen for you to choose from. So just pick one and enjoy, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.